Well, my name is Lori Pritchard. I am with KSL Television, and I am absolutely honored to be the MC for today. When they asked me to do this, I thought, okay, so what do I really know about finances? And granted, I was an economics major in college, but that's not really finance. That's more mathematics, if you know anything about economics. And so I started thinking about my finances and kind of some of the lessons that I've learned in my life when it comes to managing money, paying the bills, being in a relationship with someone who has a very different outlook on finances than you do. That's hard to navigate sometimes. And I think back probably to my earliest memory, and that is after college. I was living in Dallas, Texas, and I was working at a law firm thinking that I was going to go on and go to law school and making no money whatsoever. And I got my first credit card. And I don't know if you were anything like me when you got your first credit card, but I didn't know what to do with a credit card. I just thought you could just buy stuff and you could keep buying. And yeah, you might hit your limit, but it's okay. So yeah, I did. I rang up about $2,500 worth of just nothing. I couldn't even tell you what I bought at the time. I was in my 20s. It was dumb. So what do you do when you call, when you have this bill that you have to pay and you can't pay because you don't have enough money? So I call my parents, right? Hi, Mom. I just got my credit card bill in the mail, and I don't have the money to pay for that. And then I'm realizing that if you don't pay for it, it's going to cost you. You're going to pay interest, you're going to pay penalties. Mom, can I borrow some money? I'll pay you back. Right, that was my mom's response. She laughed at me. My parents, they could have let me borrow the money. They could have given me the money. Instead, my mom said, nope, I'm not going to give you that money. This is your responsibility. You are going to take care of it. But Mom, I probably made $18,000, literally had enough to pay my rent. And that was really, maybe my car payment too, but that was really it. Mom, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough money. How am I going to pay for this? Lori, you're going to figure that out. That is your job, not mine. So I got a second job. Does anyone know, is anyone familiar with Dallas at all? Chuy's, the restaurant, the Mexican restaurant, that was my second job. I was a waitress. I was a terrible waitress. Oh, it was terrible. But I made money. I worked there, so I had a full-time job Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends, I worked there Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. And it took me about a year to pay off that credit card bill. A year. I have never carried a credit card balance since. And that was more than 25 years ago. So I learned my lesson. I don't want to get a second job. And so that's what today is all about. You know, us learning from one another. We've all made financial mistakes, all of us, but also learning how we can correct those mistakes in the future and learn about things that we may not know much about. And protecting our kids. I really like that some of the things on the agenda today are about teaching those lessons to your kids. I don't think my mom really stopped and thought, oh, maybe she did. My mom was a teacher, so she probably thought, I'm going to teach you a lesson. But sometimes, you know, right now, my daughter's 13, my son's 10, and they come to me and they want something and I buy it. And I'm not sure that that is the smartest thing for me to be doing. They have since started making some money with chores, and I've opened a bank account for them to save that money. And so lately I've been taking half of that, explaining to them, this is money that you need to save. You can't spend. You need to save. Because right now my 10-year-old wants to buy some video game credits. I don't know what that is, and you're wasting your money. And so those are the kinds of conversations that I'm having with my children. And hopefully today will give us ideas on how not only can we teach our own kids, but also teach ourselves and look to the future. Something else my parents have taught me, we were very, very middle class growing up. My mother was a teacher. My dad was a meat cutter. And they saved. We didn't have a lot of money. And I nearly sent my parents into bankruptcy going to college because I went to a private school. And they saved every penny they could to send me to private school. But now they live in this big house. They have a Corvette. They have a swimming pool. I'm like, I go home and I'm like, where did you get all of this money? And my mother said, your father made me save every single month. I wanted to spend, he made me save. And this is what we have today. So looking ahead at my retirement, I hope that I have a bigger house and a swimming pool and a fast car, because my parents were smart enough with their money to be able to do that. Again, it's the lessons that you learn within your family that kind of stick with you, at least hopefully they stick with you. So those are the things that we'll be talking about today. Something else that I love that we'll be talking about, one of the workshops, is how to have the talk with your partner, soon-to-be spouse. I never had that conversation with my husband. My husband and I have been married for almost 15 years this year. And he will go to Costco, and if something's on sale, he comes home with 3 of them every time. We don't need that. We don't need that, Travis. Why are you doing that? But it was on sale. It's a great deal. And so we're still having these conversations. He found a paddleboard on Amazon. It's like $899, but at Costco, it's $399. He bought 2. Why do we need 2? We don't need 2. 15 years later, we're having these conversations with one another. But I'm the one that pays the bills, generally speaking. He's not the one that does that. So I get the statements in the mail, and I'm looking at them thinking, what? No, why did you do that? No. So we're still kind of having those conversations between one another as to what we need and what we want. And there's a want versus a need. And one of the things that I read recently that I absolutely love is that the real sign of wealth is not how much you can buy, but how much money you have, in terms of how much money you can hold on to. So it's not the things you have, it's the money that you can keep. So we'll talk about that today and really learn some strategies that can help all of us, whether we're young or we're in middle age or looking forward to retirement. Those are all the things that we can discuss together as women, because we're here to build one another up. Isn't that right? Isn't that what we do as women? So that's what we're looking forward to today. Something else we're going to talk about is how to start a business, and I have no idea. So, and I'm sure some of you ladies are here today to learn how to do that, and more power to you. We should all support one another in that endeavor. We are going to stay in this room today this morning, I should say, for the Sense and Sensibility panel. And there will be some more workshops before lunch. And I'm told that those sessions are in the north of the ballroom. So those later workshops will be there. We're going to have lunch. We'll have a buffet lunch, sandwiches, salads. And then we'll come back and there will be more workshops after lunch. And then my colleague, FM 100.3's Rebecca Cressman, will be here this afternoon. And she will be raffling off door prizes, because we all love prizes, right? We all love free stuff. So I would like to welcome to the stage the mastermind. I feel like I should have maybe a drum roll too. The mastermind behind this event, Utah State Treasurer David Damschen. Treasurer Damschen, I have to put on my reading glasses now. Very official here. Treasurer Damschen is the 25th Utah State Treasurer, appointed to the office in 2015 Re-elected to a 4-year term in 2016, he's responsible for the state's banking, cash, debt management, investment of public funds, including the $16 billion Public Treasurer Investment Fund, and the administration of the state's unclaimed property division. He also serves as ex officio member of 20 boards and commissions, including Utah Retirement Systems, Utah Housing Corporation, and the Utah Council on Financial and Economic Education. Treasurer Damschen has extensive experience in institutional investments and treasury operations. Before serving for 7 years as Utah's Chief Deputy State Treasurer, he spent most of his nearly 20 years in the private sector in the institutional trust and custody, treasury management, and retail divisions of a national banking organization. But bottom line, he's also a really nice guy. Treasurer Damschen.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me okay? It's great to be with you today. So much of what we're here to do and learn goes back to my early days in retail banking. I've seen it all. And no one here is here because we have it all figured out. We can all learn from one another. There's so much to know, and there's so much to do, because so much of financial capability has to do with taking what you know and turning it into behavioral change, whether it's being better about savings or setting goals and saving and investing for retirement. So that's what it's all about. So this is our first annual Women in the Money Financial Empowerment Conference, and I want to welcome you all. I and my team work with a coalition of more than 50 private and public entities that share a common mission to increase the financial capability of Utahns. We're working with the State Board of Education and Governor Herbert, our legislature, and nonprofit partners to further enhance financial literacy efforts and education in our public schools, programming that has already earned the only A+ rating by the Center for Financial Literacy. Today's conference is critical, and it is a critical and exciting extension of our efforts in this area. I'm very excited about the program, but on a sad note, we're not joined today by a very important person, my wife, Jody. So while I and my team in the Treasurer's Office are a well-oiled machine in all respects in terms of our financial management, frankly, I have a hard time devoting as much attention to personal affairs as I should. I'm sure you've all heard the story of the cobbler whose children wore no shoes. Jody and I have saved and invested consistently for retirement. We come from a banking and insurance background, and I think our insurance situation is solid. Our retirement investments are coming along. There's still work to do. There's always room for improvement. Now, on those rare occasions when Jody cooks up something for me that's high cholesterol, I always joke about her eagerness to cash in on our life insurance. I've told Jody, I think we're in great shape for me to die, but we need to work on our game plan for me to live on and retire. So I thought Jody might like to come to the conference. We could both benefit from many of the program elements. So I was trying to sell her on coming today. She had to work. She just can't be here. So I was trying to sell her on what we were going to be talking about today. I said smart salary negotiations, preparing for retirement. When I said preparing for retirement, she looked at me and she said, "You mean like arsenic?" So next year, Jody will be hosting a panel on Black Widows Unite. That's next year's program. Come back next year. So why are we focusing on strengthening women? Well, women face some unique financial situations. You live longer than men and are more likely to outlive your assets. You're also more likely to teach your children about money and finances, as well as become caretakers for elderly or disabled loved ones, helping to manage their finances. Women are playing an increasing role in the workforce and market. 89% of financial decisions are made by women, and 2/3 of household breadwinners and co-breadwinners are women. Why are we focusing today on financial capability? Unfortunately, despite the generally positive economic outlook, most Americans are not in a secure financial situation. Just 39% of Americans say they have enough savings to cover a $1,000 emergency room visit or car repair. Additionally, the Social Security Trust Fund is projected to reach depletion by the year 2034. At that point, it will only be able to provide approximately 75% of the benefits that we've been promised. This should concern us because Social Security serves as the sole source of retirement income for 38% of retired Utah women. Utah's bankruptcy rate is the fourth highest in the country. One of our breakout sessions today features a bankruptcy judge that will discuss Utah's history of bankruptcy. And in that session, you can hear about solutions for managing debt and avoiding bankruptcy. I'm sure you've heard student loan debt in 2019 is the highest ever. There are more than 44 million borrowers who collectively owe $1.5 trillion in student loan debt. Today, we're excited to bring together some of Utah's top financial leaders to share their knowledge and skills with us so we can address these issues and increase the financial security of our families, of our communities, and of our state. We cannot be gathered here today with this dynamite program without the significant contributions of these folks, and I'd like to just take a second to recognize some of them. First, my team in the Office of State Treasurer, especially my Chief Deputy, Kurt Slaw, Communications Assistant, Marissa Sittler, and the quarterback of this entire effort, our amazing Public Information and Outreach Officer, Brittany Griffin. Brittany has worked tirelessly day and night. I don't think she enjoyed any semblance of a normal Easter celebration yesterday. She worked the entire weekend. Can we all just join and give Marissa and Brittany a big hand? Are you still showing up for work tomorrow, Brittany? No, the next day. But you will show up the next day? You're going to come back? Okay. I'd like to also thank the extraordinary board members of the Utah Financial Empowerment Coalition, which serves as the fiscal agent for this operation and also was instrumental in planning the program. Dr. Susan Madsen, Orrin R. Woodbury, Professor of Leadership and Ethics at Utah Valley University and Director of the Utah Women in Leadership Project. Pat Jones, Chief Executive Officer of the Women's Leadership Institute. Jesse Meekum, budget guru, tech entrepreneur, and founder and CEO of YNAB. You Need a Budget. Susan Spears, Chief Executive Officer, Utah Association of Certified Public Accountants. Aaron Jemison, Director of Public Policy, YWCA Utah. Danny Harris, Associate State Director of Advocacy, AARP Utah. And Brittany Griffin, our Public Information Officer in the Office of State Treasurer. And we would not be here without the generous support of our sponsors, U.S. Bank, Chase Bank, America First Credit Union, Fidelity Investments, Wells Fargo Bank, Washington Federal, Zions Bank, Bank of Utah, Cypress Credit Union, My529, Key Bank, and Utah Community Credit Union. Let's give our sponsors a hand. Thank you. I'm very thankful for Lori Pritchard, our wonderful MC, and our media partner KSL, and we're thrilled to hear from Gail Miller today during lunch. I know you're all excited to hear what she has to say. I know I am. I'd also like to thank our friends with the Utah Council on Financial and Economic Education who provided invaluable support in the development of today's program. So with that, I think we're right on time, Susan, maybe just a couple of minutes early. To kick things off, if you'll give us just a couple of minutes to prepare our panel, we're going to move on to the Sense and Sensibility panel. Next up.
Just making sure, oh, yep, it works. How are you? Doing okay? You're here? It's filled in. I'm excited to be here. I'm Susan Madsen. I'm the, as he mentioned before, as David mentioned before, I am the founding director of the Utah Women in Leadership Project and also a professor at UVU in the Woodbury School of Business. And it's great to be able to work with this team. And I'm so grateful to have this panel here today. And I want to do some introductions of them. First of all, we have, whoa, I have the low seat. So that was really low. I can barely see your heads now. And it's complicated after you hit 50 because I have like my phone here, some Kleenexes in case I have a tear, some glasses, and a pen in case I have notes. So I made it up here though. I'm happy to be here. So Susan Spears is sitting next to me, and she has been the CEO of the Utah Association of CPAs since July of 2013. Susan has always been involved with the business environment and the profession. She sits on the Federal Funds Commission for the state of Utah and is a member of the board of directors for the Utah Council for Economic Education and Jumpstart Coalition for Financial Literacy in the state of Utah. She is a member of the Women's Summit under the Department of Corrections, an organization that prepares women to transition into society after serving time in the prison system, and also the Utah Council of Financial and Economic Education. She's also been the president of a few different CPA organizations, and prior to that, she had a practice that specialized in small businesses. She enjoys playing with her husband, Steve, of 33 years. I just hit 34 years on Friday. 2 children, daughter-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. Boy or girl? Boys or girls? One of each. Okay. And you should have a mic if you just flip that on right here. Yeah, and you two can share, and you two can share that one. So welcome, Susan. Thank you for being on this panel. And Erin Jemison is the Director of Public Policy at the YWCA Utah, advocating on behalf of Utah girls and women in the areas of economic advancement, racial justice, and health and safety. She also oversees Real Women Run at the YWCA, a collaborative nonpartisan initiative to empower women to participate fully in public life and civic leadership. Woohoo, I'm on that board, important stuff. Okay, I'll keep going. Erin relocated to Utah after leading the Colorado Coalition Against Sexual Assault as their executive director, where she also served as the chairperson of the Colorado Sex Offender Management Board. She has over a decade of experience working directly with survivors of sexual and domestic violence. Erin's educational focus was on gender equity, and she has a bachelor's in sociology from William Smith College and a master's in public administration from Montana State University. Welcome. Where are we? Janice. These are impressive women, aren't they? Janice Bullock. She started at Squire in 1999 as a member of Squire's tax team. In 2000, she started what became Squire's QuickBooks support team and client accounting service lead. She led Squire's advisory team from 2012 to 2017 and recently took over Squire's managing partner in January of 2018. And in August 2018, Janice was named CEO of Squire and Company. And she is the only CEO of this type of firm in the state, right, that we know about. Well, not the only CEO, but women CEO in the state. So there you go. So she also has been named as an Intuit Top 100 Pro Advisor for the past 4 years. She has also been the recipient of the Women to Watch Emerging Leader and the Women to Watch Experienced Leader Awards in the past years. She's been a recipient of Utah Business Magazine's 30 Women to Watch Award for 2012, and she's been twice named to the CPA Practice Advisory's Top 40 under 40 CPAs in America. She graduated cum laude from Brigham Young University with a bachelor's and a master's of accountancy with an emphasis in taxation. Welcome.
Thanks.
And not least, Sister Rena Aberto was sustained as second counselor in the Relief Society General Presidency in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on April 2017. Prior to her call, she also served as a member of the Primary General Board and in different callings in Relief Society, Young Women, Primary, Sunday School, and Scouting. Rena was born in Nicaragua. She moved to the United States in 1984, and she and her husband, Carlos, and thank you, Carlos. Where's Carlos for coming? He's like, I feel a little bit like a fish out of water. I'm like, we're fans when we see men at our women's events. So they live in Orem. They have 3 children and 3 grandchildren. One of them is very new, right? And Rena studied industrial engineering in Nicaragua and earned an associate degree in computer science from Utah Valley University. She has worked in the language industry for more than 25 years and currently works as a translator in a small translation business she owns with her husband. Welcome. Let's give him a hand. So, my first question to you today is, why do you care about the importance of women learning about and understanding money and finances? Susan, let's start with you, and we'll go down and we'll shake it up in a little bit.
All right. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is a great event, a lot of work. I'm as excited as you are to learn a few things. I know a few things. I have much more to learn. As indicated, I was in public practice for about 30 years before I took on the job of CEO of the Utah Association of CPAs. And something that I learned throughout my practice was, number one, the men may go to work, but as women, we spend the money. We make about 89% of the purchases in the United States. Pretty broad, pretty interesting. But we don't have the knowledge that perhaps we need. Sad days for me in my office would be when a widow would come in with a box full of files saying, my husband just passed away. This is what he left me. I have no idea what to do. I've never paid the bills. I don't know if we own any debt. I don't know what our assets are, and I don't know where to go. That, for me, that was one thing as I practiced that was near and dear to my heart, was to make sure that even when I prepared tax returns, that the husband and the wife came in and signed those returns, not the husband saying, do you care if I just sign my wife's name? It was important that as women, we need to know what is going on.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to come at this question from a couple different angles. First, I think it's important to recognize that there's still a myth that Utah women don't work outside of the home, and that's actually not true. We are at or slightly above the national average in women participating in the paid labor force. I could talk for another 3 hours about how we should all be getting paid even when we're working inside the home, but that's a whole other issue. But I think we need to recognize that women are major contributors to the financial success of their families, and therefore there should be no reason that we're not having conferences and education opportunities like this for both genders and for all members of our family, because we all participate in that activity. And unfortunately, because of things like women still being less likely to work in higher paying jobs, in managerial jobs, I think that's changing, but we still see a gap there between men and women in Utah. Women are more likely to experience poverty if they are ever in the situation where they're caring for their families without a spouse. If they, once they get to retirement age, we see dependence on the public, on Social Security and other public programs. So recognizing that we still have some barriers and that we need to kind of not turn a blind eye to the fact that women are participating in the economy, and we need to break down some of those barriers. The other quick thing I'll say, having worked with survivors of domestic violence and other forms of abuse for most of my career, the YWCA is the largest provider of domestic violence services in the state of Utah. About 250 women and children live with us just a few blocks from here. because they are escaping violent situations. People often say, why do women stay in these situations? And I say the number one reason is because they love the person that they're in the relationship with. It's a really complicated situation often. But number two is finances. If we don't figure out ways for women to be able to put food on the table and care for their children and pay rent and find jobs on their own, they're never going to be able to leave those abusive situations. So those would be my top reasons.
And in general, 40% of women in the state of Utah, the Utah Women in Leadership Project, if you're not familiar with that, we have reports up to yin-yang on everything. But 40% of women who are single mothers in the state of Utah are living at poverty level. So that's a substantial number of women. Janice.
I am passionate about helping women understand finances because I know that approximately 90% of us will have sole custody of our assets at some point in our lives. The chances are greater that you will than they aren't. But on the other hand, in my experience, similar to Susan's, as a CPA, is about 90% of women aren't engaged in their finances. So this past tax season, I only had 2 wives come in with their husbands during tax season. And I had 2 additional ones who corresponded with me about their taxes. But that's 4 out of a lot of clients.
What percentage is that of, like about 90%?
It's probably about 90%, yeah. Okay. And so it's important to me because I've had similar experiences where someone comes in and says, this has happened and now I don't even know what to do. That I find ways to help women get excited about their finances, become engaged in your finances, to understand and to motivate other women. Every life that you touch is a life that you can change, and you may never even know, but you might excite them, and that might be something 20 years from now that changes their lives.
So Janice, when they come in, when you get a spouse or a woman come in, can you pretty much convince them that that's important so they continue? I mean, is that really a barrier, just getting them in to even talk?
Yes, I think it is. I mean, the ones who come in tend to be incredibly engaged, but sometimes, like I've invited husbands to bring their wives the next time. And when that happens, it's kind of like, oh, I'm here to meet you. My husband says I need to meet you, which is a step. It's good to know your CPA. But it is a barrier to get them to be engaged. So, yes.
Great. Reina.
Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you so much for so many of you that are here, because I know that this is very important. I think that money is something that is important for all of us. We spend money every day, and we need money for our needs. And I know that if we don't have the skills to manage money, then it can manage us. And it can be the source of contention in the home. It can be the source of stress, anxiety, and I will even say sickness. I think that our health it's affected by money. But on the other hand, if we are wise with the money that we have, then it can be the source of joy and of peace of mind. And I think peace of mind is something that no money can buy. So I believe that acquiring money management skills is more important than money productivity. Because if we don't know how to manage our money, then it doesn't matter how much money we have. It will always be a problem.
Thank you so much. So one of the things that I've studied through the years in the books that I've written and the scholarship I've done is, and I call them transformational moments or transformational experiences. And so I've asked the panelists to think about a transformational experience in their life that really helped them initially see, maybe I'm talking even when you were young, initially see the importance of finances and money, or somebody else that you've seen really have a transformational experience. So I'd like each of you to share one of them. Let's start with Janice this time. I'm going to shake it up.
All right, I actually have a prop. When I was in 8th grade, I went in with my mom to my 8th grade session with the school counselor and planning for classes. And she had a packet of things. And in that packet was, pick your career, and then it had a list of how much you would make, and then you listed expenses. And I was able to quickly see that my chosen career at that point in 8th grade was not going to even break even if I was going to try to support a family. But I really wasn't too worried about it. But then she flipped the packet over. And on the back of the packet was a piece of paper that I keep with me, and I've kept with it for me for years. This is just a copy of it. But it says, unless you can promise your daughter that she will marry, that her husband will earn enough money to support her, that he will never leave her, or that she will never leave him, or that he will never die, then you must tell her that she must be able to support herself. And for some reason, as an 8th grader, that hit me really hard. And I spent the rest of my education looking for something where I could support myself and I could support a family. Like I said, that was so impactful for me that I still have that wrinkled piece of blue paper. I keep it in a special folder in my desk. And I pull it out, and it is one of those moments I was referring to earlier that where you can affect someone's life. And that counselor did. I'm sure she has no idea that she did, and I have no idea how to find her and tell her. But it changed my life, and it gave me that passion about being interested in my own finances and not letting life happen to me, but letting me be in charge of where things went.
And Janice, I know you really well. I know your background. And even though you were preparing, you really didn't think you would use it. It was kind of a fall back on kind of thing. And that didn't happen in your life.
Right, absolutely. I chose accounting, obviously. And I chose it because I looked at it as something I could do just during tax season, January to April, or something I could do from home. I never did plan on being full-time. I never planned on being a CEO. I would have freaked out at 8th grade. I was the shyest person you can believe. It just wasn't something I thought I would do. But about 12 years ago, my husband began to experience severe health problems. And the day they called me from his work and told me they'd put him in an ambulance because he'd passed out under his desk was the day I realized that I was going to have to use my career and support my family. And I have done that for the last 12 years completely.
Thank you for sharing. Reina.
Well, my experience is totally different. I came to the United States from Nicaragua when I was 21. And even though I had worked in Nicaragua a little bit, I really didn't, I didn't work for a long time, so it didn't really count. When I came here, I made the minimum wage for a while. It was $3.35 back then per hour. And I remember that even though it was hard in the beginning, I knew exactly how much I had and how much I could spend. And, finances were very tight. But then a few years after that, my income kind of doubled in a way. And then I saw myself with more money, and then I started making bad decisions. I remember that I received my first credit card, just like Lori told us recently. And then I decided to spend money. I wanted to buy a car, and I made the mistake of paying the down payment with my credit card. Oh. So, and then at that point I had, the car payment, I had the credit card, and I also had insurance, which I didn't know that I had to pay. And then all of the other expenses, gas, maintenance, and all of that. And then that started like a cycle in which I got into more debt. So it took me a few years to realize that I needed to stop that cycle. So I made the decision, okay, no more. I won't get into debt anymore, and I'm going to work hard to pay my debt off. And it took a lot of discipline, a lot of hard work, but I did it. So I learned really great lessons from that experience. One is that the fact that you have more money doesn't mean that you have to spend more money. You have to just be wise. You have to save. You have to really think about the decisions that you are making, and not to commit your money, the money that you still don't have, that you haven't earned. But probably what I should have done was to save for that down payment, and then prove to myself that I was ready to have that extra expense. So don't make that same mistake. Teach your children that they need to be wiser than I was.
Great. Erin?
There isn't one specific person that I worked with, but I would say that one of the things that you get taught when you first do victim advocacy work of any kind, my very first job was answering a crisis line, bringing a phone home with me at 2 a.m, having it ring and having no idea what was going to be on the other end of that line. One of the first things you learn is to help someone create a safety plan. Sounds really boring, but it's actually sort of network TV-ish, where you're helping them think of the list of things that they would need to have in a hidden location to be able to walk out the door at a moment's notice with them and often their children if an abusive situation has gotten to the point where they can no longer stay and they don't have time to gather up those things. And I would say 9 out of 10 women I spoke with were fine when it came to everything that their child needed, immunization records, birth certificates, medicine, all of the things that their kid would need to be able to go to school. But when it came to making sure that they had money in their pocket and knew how to access their family's financial resources, that's when it would just be silence, and they had no idea how to do those things and be able to leave a situation that was really damaging for them and their children physically. But if you can't pay the bills, it's really difficult to leave. And I was just struck over and over and over again how what seems like a really simple, practical knowledge or information was what kept people in these horrifying situations and was what made it really difficult to leave, even if it had to be in the middle of the night. And I would say on a personal note, my mom was the money earner in my family. I mean, she was the one who went to work every day and earned the money while my dad cut down trees and built our house and decided to be all like, Mr. I'm going to sustain us through off the land. That didn't work out very well. But my mom earned the money. She put she paid the bills and put food on the table, and my dad managed the money. And from a really early age, my parents have no idea where this came from, but I decided this was very unfair, and I did not understand why my mom was earning the money, but my dad decided how it got spent. So for whatever reason, that put in my brain really early on that I would make the money and I would also manage it. I make a lot less money than my husband, but I manage all of it. So the tables have turned.
That's great. Just a quick comment. Sometimes people, if you're not aware of the research on women in Utah, you would probably not know that we actually are above the national average on domestic violence. And so what Erin is talking about, to some of us might think it's just out there and maybe we don't know people, but it's significantly high in Utah. And we have a brief about it, or a research snapshot if you're interested in that. And also sexual assault, we're significantly above the national average. So what Erin is talking about, and I know you did much of your work in Colorado, but it's a significant problem here in Utah. And you see it at the really desperate levels, don't you, Susan?
All right. Well, I grew up in an environment where college was number one. As kids, we were going to go to college. And number two, my grandmother and I bonded at a very early age. I would say she was my biggest champion growing up. She always said, as well as my mother, to Janice's point, you need to be able to make sure that if something happens, you need to be able to support yourself. None of us think that that's going to happen. When my husband and I got married, we set a goal that we were both gainfully employed, did fairly well, but we set a goal that we would live off one salary for in case anything ever happened. Who would ever know that 10, 12 years into our marriage, he worked for a family organization. The succession planning, he all of a sudden was out on his own. Well, I was able to commit to him. I said, I'll support the family for 3 years. Well, that worked out great. And then several years later, 2008, the recession happened. Construction turned upside down, if you'll remember. Bankruptcy in the state of Utah went haywire, and more people were not able to pay their mortgages. We had generals and homeowners that could not pay us for their homes. And so, it took a huge personal hit on us because we believe in paying our bills, and which meant that we had to pay some bills that others could not hit. But that, for me, that was a huge turning point that I was grateful for parents and grandparents. And my grandmother was in the construction industry as well. She opened up her own lighting company up in Ogden, opened that up. And so we were kind of always in cahoots over that. But I was able to grow up and see a lady who I admired very greatly, sustain her own business and whatnot. So I've always been grateful to have that background in my own life.
Thank you so much. So, as you know, women live in all kinds of life circumstances. And within the state of Utah, we know the data on that. We have women of all socioeconomic levels, from poverty to very affluent. And in some of you probably all, except for Aaron maybe, except for your donors, work with the women in all those situations. Things like age, different women of different ages, family support systems. Raina and I were talking about refugees who come to Utah, and immigrants, and all kinds of situations. Can you think of any others that you can throw out real quick of situations besides age, socioeconomic, just family support systems? Marital status is another one. Anything else? Any other demographics that just come to mind? They will. I put them on. They're like, that wasn't on my list of questions. So why is it important for women of all the, different marital status, socioeconomic, why is it important for everybody to really understand this? Let's start with you.
Well, because like I said before, money is such an important part of our life. And like it was said already, we never know what is going to happen in the future. So many things that could be out of our control. And so we need to be prepared. No matter where we are, what our situation is, we can always do better. We can always ask ourselves the question, where am I? Where do I want to be? And what can I do to get there? Also, as women, we have so much influence in our families, in our communities. And if we try to learn these skills to learn to manage our money the best way we can, then we can help others. And I think that there is no other joy than to be able to help others. That has happened to us as a family because we have been disciplined in trying to have savings and trying to be wise. When our families are in situations in which we can help them, we have that reserve. And that brings us so much joy. So it's important that we can get to that point. Doesn't matter what age we are in and where our situation is.
I love that comment that actually if we prepare ahead, I'm admitting it, I'm almost 58. It kind of sucks right now because I'm feeling older, have a few aches and pains. But as people used to talk about retirement, and not till last year. We've saved, but I'm like, it's actually reality. It's getting closer for me. But the thought of being able to be prepared with finances, to be able to serve and do things and not be bound when we hit, a certain age, that excites me. I love that comment. Anyone else want to pop in on this one?
I love that comment, and I think you made the comment earlier that money can either manage us or we can manage money, and I find that so true. Within the UACPA, I've always been involved with financial literacy, and we have the opportunity, a lot of our CPAs will go teach financial literacy concepts in the prison system. And we teach the women and the men, and we teach the men differently than the women, just because of the way we perceive money and whatnot. I tell you, every time, this is one of the favorite parts of things that I do on a volunteer basis, is you really learn to love these women. Now, we don't know, we know their names, we don't know much about them, but they are so grateful because they have not been taught. And we get them as they're getting ready to transition out into society. And they have not been taught. And for me, I've been humbled and grateful for what I've been taught, but also to be able to share that, to be able to give them a leg up, if you will, a hand up, so that when they transition back out, they have some basic concepts so that they can hopefully get out of the situations or stay out of the situations of what brought them in. Because there are, finance is the root as to why a lot of them end up in, or why we end up in abusive relationships and whatnot. So I love that. Money can manage you, or you can manage money.
And I'm going to ask, we can come back to this question, but I'm thinking as you're talking that maybe people here want to understand. I mean, you are the ones in the room that see that finance is important, but there's probably a million women out in the state that may not think. Why do you think women, in your experience, you two professionally, you and Erin, I mean, not just you, but Erin and Irina, you look at it from a different perspective. Why do you think, especially, I mean, in Utah and other places, why do you think women are feeling like they don't need to understand money? I mean, what do you think? Anyone?
I mean, I would say that there's a level of stress due to the unknown, that when there's that lack of information and feeling a lack of confidence in yourself around having that information, that's a stressful thing. And I think we as human beings try to avoid things that are stressful for us.
So it feels like a risk, you're saying, to women to put themselves out of their comfort zone?
I think so. And I think if you grow up in a family or in a larger kind of context that's telling you that that's not for you to worry about, that's not for you to think about, then I think there's just a general stress associated with it being this black hole. I don't know what that is. I don't understand how to get started. It feels too big. It feels like I'm not sure what the first few steps are. And so it's easier to avoid that, especially if someone else is already taking care of it. And I think I loved what you said about the piece of paper, which I want to get a copy of before we leave today, hand it out to all of my nieces and nephews, I think about my sister-in-law who, she went to college. She had a career. When she and my brother-in-law decided to have children, they decided that she would stay home and take care of them, and everything was going along fine. And then he was diagnosed with aggressive cancer and was dead within 2 years. That was not in anybody's plan. Nobody expected that to happen. And yet she was then in a situation where she not only had a gap in her work history, which is a whole other conference topic, but she didn't know where to get the information. He did a great job of giving her as much information as he could, but there's still that level of intimidation and that lack of confidence because she hadn't been practicing it. And I heard them both talk often about how they wished that they had just done it together so that was one less thing she had to worry about at the most difficult point in her life. She now had the information in piles of paper and files and lists of things to do, but it still terrified her because it was still something she had to hear about in a rushed way at a really traumatic time in her life rather than something that had been an ongoing process for her. And I think that I see that even when something traumatic doesn't happen to someone, that level of that intimidation and lack of knowledge.
Sometimes we don't think traumatic things will happen to us. And I'm going to get a little teary-eyed, but I have two good friends over at that table who have both lost their husbands this year to different kinds of cancer. And Melissa, 3 houses down, I think 6 weeks, 7 weeks, she lost her husband ago. That's how recent. So we just don't know. And Shannon, I think it's been, where's Shannon? 9 months. And that's just in my block. That's just in my block.
I was just going to add, I totally agree about the confidence side. But another thing I find is a huge barrier is just time and stress. And as women, we take on so much, right? You're carrying the mental workload and a lot of the physical workload in your house. And sometimes if somebody says, I'll do this part, thank you so much. That is something I don't have to own, right? But the chances are you're going to have to own it. And that it's hard to take on one more thing when you're tired and exhausted. And I get it. I totally get it.
So there's various reasons, I think. But thank you for sharing a few. You have one more.
I would just like to say that it's so easy to fall into the trap of overspending. Every store is designed to make you spend your money. And so we need to be disciplined, and we need to learn and to control ourselves. You know, the payday loans and all those are not good solutions.
Yeah.
Because you probably have the money today, but then you have to pay it back in a few weeks and without a big interest. So it's easy to fall into the trap, and we need to be disciplined, and we need to know where we want to go, where we want to be, and make that decision ahead of time.
And one thing I want to mention with the two friends that I have in the room, well, I have more friends in the room than those. I hope I do. But they were fortunate enough and prepared enough that both of them have their bachelor's degrees already. And that puts you into a level of confidence that's different. And there's so much research around confidence, and women that have even an associate degree, a bachelor's degree is better, and their confidence to learn new things and so forth. But I also have some friends that didn't have that education as well. Any other comments about some of our conversations before I move on, or are we okay? Okay. So all of you work with women in Utah. This is kind of moving the conversation forward that we were just having. But what challenges do you see in terms of money? Erin's talked about that a little bit already. And what gaps are there understanding, of money and their skills? A payday loan is such an interesting one. Susan, you want to talk about that one? It breaks my heart sometimes. I serve on the United Way of Utah County Board, and we've talked about these issues, and it just breaks my heart sometimes on payday loans, because they tend to focus on women or men in poverty already, right?
Right. I think payday loans, if you look at where they're situated, where are they? They're always by a mall. They're always by somewhere where we want to go buy something and do that little impulse thing. Oh, no big deal. I can go borrow $1,000 from payday loans. Ladies, payday loans, it's not 12% interest. It's not 18, nor is it 30 like your charge card. It can be upwards of 200 to 400%, especially if you do not pay that monthly payment.
So if I'm going to give you a math question. You too. So, Dave, you're on the spot here. So if they borrow $1,000 and it takes them 6 months to a year to pay it off, how much are they paying?
You could be paying $2,000 for that $1,000 impulse spend.
See, that wasn't bad. I didn't put you on the spot.
Thanks. I was going to have to take my shoes off and count on my toes. but plan, we're not, I'll be the first to admit I'm kind of a tighty-watty. But anyone that knows me knows I have a little shoe fetish. It's actually...
I didn't know that. Must not be your friend. Those are cute.
But plan, we're not, but I've always been one that as we do family budgets or even corporate budgets or whatever, plan for the fun. And I think that you have to, it's okay to have fun. And, I'm one that I don't like debt. It gets back to that, I don't want to be a slave to interest, so I try to make interest be my slave. But there are things that we're going to have to go into debt for. And I think that as you plot your financial spending plan and as you plot what it is you want to do, there are things that you do have to pay interest for that hopefully turn around to become that investment for you that will then turn around and pay you back. And so, in your mind, payday loans a lot of times attract the impulse spend. So I would say, can you maybe put off that impulse spend for a week or two? Maybe look for the better deal on the big screen TV or whatever it is.
And I think, all of the topics we're just touching on here, there's workshops. Have you looked at the list? There's so many workshops. And most of you are like, I need 2 of them that are at the same time. I need that. But I think you have 3 breakouts, right? So you have various ones. And we're going to do this conference every year. So, Janice.
I just want to build on what Susan was saying. The question was about what are the gaps. And I don't think the biggest gap is things like understanding how a 401k works or what a mutual fund is. The biggest gap that I have experienced in consulting with women is understanding the emotional component of money. We fail to take the time to understand that emotional component. And almost every single woman that I've sat down with and said, okay, how can we dig you out of this? There's been a credit card. They said, well, that's the one that I use to treat myself. That's the only thing I do for myself. And so, like Susan said, you need to plan for the fun. But what I do is I watch women plan for the fun on a credit card, and they somehow justify that. And then, you ignore it, the emotional side of it. I think of finance as a lot like, how many of you get texts and you can see the top part of the text, before you read it, and it's one you don't want to read. So you just don't read it, because then maybe you won't have to deal with the problem. That's how we deal with finances a lot. We know it's there. We know it's sitting there in our unread messages box, but we don't take the time to emotionally deal with our finances.
Dig down. It takes some effort, right? It takes some work to actually go. I know when I do research, sometimes in writing, I have to be ready to go down and really engage in it.
Yep.
And so you're saying a lot of people don't want to go down.
They don't want to engage, and they go through the impulse buy, and they try to make themselves feel better. Or one of the things that hit me the hardest when I actually got very passionate about helping other women, I was at a conference similar to this. It was much smaller. And I've looked for this statistic for years, and I haven't been able to find it, but somebody presenting talked about the percentage of women, and that's the number I can't find, that when their husbands pass away and leave them life insurance money, their husbands set them up very well. Within a year, it's something like 80% of the money, or all the women have spent all of the money, it's gone.
Wow.
And I heard that and I thought, no way, there is no way. And then I had this happen with a very close family member, and within 6 weeks it was gone. And I was devastated because I knew that financial fact, and I hadn't done anything to help that situation. And a lot of that comes from the guilt that you get from getting money from your spouse's death. But again, it goes back to the emotions. If we take the time to understand our finances, the emotions don't get in the way.
So very quick, I mean, what emotion? I mean, just list some of the emotions. So fear would be one.
Fear, guilt, shame.
Oh, is there
Right?
some shame?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes there's anxiety, just loneliness.
Excitement to have money
yeah.
sometimes.
Right?
Yeah. Aaron, you were going to...
Me, Susan, it doesn't take me long to become the Debbie Downer. So the other thing I'd like to mention, because, domestic abuse isn't a downer enough. The other place that you see payday loan places is in lower income communities and where communities of color tend to live. And so stay with me. I'm going to get back to what you can do about this. But I think one of the things that we have to recognize is payday loans aren't just about your flat screen TV. For some families, they're about paying the rent. They're about making it to the next payday, which is how they originally started. And I believe on a policy level, this is where I get on my soapbox, that we need to be taking action as a state to make sure that some of these predatory lenders and situations like that are not allowed to thrive in our state. And I think we need to recognize that it isn't just about people who aren't planning for the fun. It's also about people who literally can't make ends meet because of various situations. And so where this gets to what you can do about it, besides going to all these workshops, is contact your legislator.
You got it in, Aaron. Thank you so much.
Well, yes, I think that also we need to learn to live with less sometimes. Sometimes the best way to solve our problems is to reduce. I think somebody was telling us that they decided with her husband to just sell their home and go buy a condo because that was more within their means. So we need to learn to reduce. I remember that I had a conversation with a lady back in 2008 to 2009 when we had that recession. And somebody asked her, so how is that hitting you? She's from Tonga. And she said, for our family, it really doesn't make a difference because if I can afford just 10 pounds of potatoes for a week, we can eat with 10 pounds of potatoes. And that made an impression on me. Oh. That sometimes we can reduce, we can be more, we can have a simpler life, and we can help ourselves when we are going through those hard times. But at the same time, we need to learn to have fun. Yeah. And sometimes the things that give us more joy, they don't require money, but we can treat ourselves with, a walk in the park, spending time with our family. We have so many beautiful places in here that we can just go there and treat ourselves with time to smell the flowers, to enjoy life, and to do things that do not require money.
And I was thinking while you made that comment that, so I live in Highland, and my kids went to Lone Peak High School. And they were some of the only few that really had clunker cars. People have a lot. Anybody go to, there's nice cars with kids that have nice cars. And sometimes just our example of how we spend moves to our kids just by the example, right? So my college students have better cars, a lot of them, than mine, because they use the credit cards and different things more than mine. So this expectation that it takes a long time and then we can enjoy, doesn't it seem like the kids today, no matter what you do, they want that immediate gratification? And I think that's going to be a struggle moving forward. Any comments on that? Nobody agrees with me? Yes, you agree with me? Yeah, thank you. At least you agree with me.
I worry about that. Both our kids are now married and have homes of their own, and it's been interesting for my husband and I as parents to watch them say, well, we want just fill in the blank. And we have to remind them that when we bought the house that we raised our kids in, we did not remodel it for a long time. And when we did, it was a room at a time. It was great because we had one big room that we had all the birthday parties in because there was not a stick of furniture in it. It was fabulous. You could have balloons and 3-year-olds running around and everything. And so we'll bring that back to them. We'll say, remember those birthday parties we used to have? Remember that worn out carpet that I didn't care if you spilt the Kool-Aid on? I think that for us, there was a little bit of joy in knowing that we remodeled the living room or the formal living room and was able to pay for the baby grand debt-free. And I think that we need to get back to that, reminding our kids that, save, you'll enjoy it more.
So I know that we're off script a little bit. I'm looking at the time. We have about 10 minutes left. But how young, and I know there's some sessions that'll talk about this, but how young should we start having some kind of money conversation with our children or our grandchildren? I have a 3-year-old grandchild and a 2-month-old. So should I start with the 3-year-old?
I was actually watching some home movies the other day, and there's a video of my son when he's 2. And I asked him what he got for his birthday, and he said, money. And I said, what did you do with it? And he said, bank. So I started those, I had forgotten this, but I had started those conversations with him at 2 years old. And of my 2 kids, I had probably focused on that a little bit more because I probably had more time. And he's definitely a saver. Just yesterday, he was telling me he's a senior in high school, he's graduating, and he said, my friends want to go to New York after graduation, but I'd rather just put my money in the bank. So.
That's amazing.
The earlier you do it, the more they're going to catch on to it.
And yesterday I finally got her social security number, but I have a 2-month-old granddaughter. And I did open, I see Len over here, my 529 account for Hadley Ray Sterling. It's her name. And I have one for my 3-year-old grandchild. So any other comments about that? I've got a couple more questions for us. So what opportunities? So, Erin, I'm not going to let you, since you're the downer kind of person, I don't know if you'll have something to say about this one, but I'm teasing her. I know her really well. What opportunities related to money and finances do you see that women really could shine and excel? And are there things that women in Utah don't even know about that might be things they could shine? So any comments except for Erin? No, Erin, you can't.
I can say something. I don't know if this exactly answers the question, but I would say that it is the most popular education opportunity that we offer at the YWCA for women who live with us and who seek our services in the domestic violence program is around learning to balance your checkbook and manage your finances. I guess no one has checkbooks anymore, but that general concept. And I think that one of the challenges that I see, I already went to challenges. I'm going to get to opportunities. One of the challenges I see is, and women in our shelter talk about this, is that the gender roles that they were raised with and that they were taught to believe about whose job it was. And I see them now teaching their children differently and making sure that their daughters as well as their sons are learning this information. And if people who are in one of the most difficult situations that anyone faces at a time when they're balancing so much and dealing with so much, not just practical issues, but emotional issues, if they can kind of start teaching their kids about these things, I think it really points to the opportunity for all of us to do that.
Other comments?
Well, it's never too early to learn, and there are so many resources around us that we just need to look for them. And we always need to ask the question, what are the motives of the people that are giving us advice? What are they trying to do? Are they really trying to help me? And we can look around, we can look at friends or family members that could give us advice. And there are so many resources in the community too.
Yeah.
I can see here.
They've got big packets on the table
yes.
too.
So ask for help. Ask for help.
So I'm going to move, and I just want you to kind of get the mic right between you. So you can, yes, there you go. So I'm going to say a certain age or group, and then just say what are the topics that are most important. So when parents are talking to their children, what are the topics? Savings is one, right? Staying out of debt? Or
School, education.
about getting it or
Getting
saving
it.
for it? Or
Saving
both?
for it.
Okay.
We saved when our kids were born. So I didn't know. Yes. Thank you, Erin. Oh, thanks, Mom. I kind of liked you holding it. So, at Love 529, when our kids were growing up, it was probably around, but I didn't know about it. But the month that they were born was the month that we started putting away because, as I mentioned, education when I was growing up, we've just moved forward with the next generation. So I think education is huge.
And I have to say, we still have the attitude sometimes that I paid for it all myself when I was young. And we see this in Utah a lot, so my kids need to pay for everything themselves. But I'll tell you, I'm in the classroom with students, and they can be working, and sometimes they work way too much, and they can't even engage in their education. But we need everybody involved in that.
It's hard.
I was going to say spending plans, taking a child and helping them save for something specific and know where they're going to spend their money is creating that muscle memory and habit of doing that when they're older.
How about teenagers?
Discipline. I think discipline is an important thing to learn. When we go to the store and we want to buy something just because it's by the cashier and it looks very colorful, we need to be disciplined.
Okay.
I would say credit cards. I know we talked about that coming a little later, but I know plenty of teens who have
Do you?
credit cards and don't understand what they really cost.
But probably the same savings,
Yeah.
some of the same things. How about college students? What are the most important financial topics for college students?
Don't order pizza every night. Oh, sorry. That was just me.
You're a downer. No pizza.
A lot of reasons for that.
Along with that, though, I think college students can learn how to shop responsibly.
Oh, okay.
Right, and be able to cook and save a lot of money that way. I see a lot of college students that get into trouble for eating out 3 meals a day financially, and then that creates all sorts of other problems too.
How about young married folks? Say some of the same things, but
Same
anything
thing.
specific?
Budgeting. We need to
actual
learn to
budgeting.
budget. Yes.
Yeah.
To know where our money is going.
How about stay-at-home mothers? What are good topics that you'd recommend for stay-at-home mothers? Something different?
All.
Okay.
DIY.
So when do you think people need to start, what age do you think people need to start thinking about Social Security, retirement? What age do you, especially you two, recommend? Or Erin?
I went to my first session on Social Security at 25, and people looked at me like I had 5 heads that I was there, but I thought it was really helpful.
So, we gave the example earlier of the payday loan and that you would spend $2,000 for your $1,000. If you can learn the same examples, but the opposite, where if you're 20 and you start saving $5 a week by the time you hit retirement, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but you have like $2 million. It works exactly the same way. And the sooner you can start doing it, the better. And the more we can teach people that younger, the better they're going to be.
So we're going to be watching how many people are in the sessions about retire. I mean, not how many people, but the age, if there's anyone younger in the session on retirement. Anything else for like retirees? Of course, what are the kinds of things you'd recommend when you're in your like 50s like me?
Well, retirees, I say be smart about your investments. And, you know, in accounting, we have a phrase that we use, trust but verify. So we were saying earlier that find out why someone is offering to help you. What is their background? Are they really licensed investors? You know, the biggest, most heartbreaking thing for me when I'm working with retirees is watching them put their money in something that's not real and it disappears and they spent their whole life working for it and now all of a sudden it's gone. And so don't let that emotional side get you in the end. Trust but verify.
Yeah. So last question, 30 seconds each. We'll start right here and then go down. So we're going to be here all day. We're going to be going to different workshops. What is your final piece of advice for people in this room?
Well, I will tell you that you have the power within yourself to control yourself in regards to money. And love is the greatest motivator. So, you know, the love that we feel for our family, the love we feel for ourselves, and find that inner source of strength. In my case, my faith is very important for me. The love I feel for my Heavenly Father and for my Savior, and the faith that the strength that gives me motivates me to try to be in control of myself, to try to use my agency the best way I can, and to be flexible, to be patient. You know, we don't get where we want to get from one day to the next. We have to be patient with ourselves. If we fail, we just learn from our mistakes and we keep going. But find that source of strength inside yourself. And usually it's love, the love that we feel for others, the love that we feel for ourselves.
I love that. Janice, 30 seconds.
Engage. Today you're going to drink from a fire hose. Don't get overwhelmed. Pick one or two things that excite you and take it back and engage in those things. And then you can build on the other things that you learned. But the biggest challenge I find from conferences like this is you walk out super on fire and then it feels super overwhelming and you just don't do anything. So engage.
Erin.
Recognize that just being able to be in this room is a privilege and that there are people who can't be at events like this for various situations. And I guarantee you know at least one woman who, even if she wanted to, could not be here today because she's raising a family by herself. She's having other kinds of difficulties. She's working 3 jobs. She's working 1 job and they won't let her be here on a Monday. And bring information back to her. Recognize that we have a responsibility to one another to share the information that we get at events like this.
And you have a bag, you have a folder, but there's all kinds of vendor tables out here with lots of information, cards, names, people to help. There's people to help.
I would say the same. Find that one or two things that you would really like to improve in and start to put it to work. Jot out a little plan and make it work because there is a ton of information here. But find that one thing that you really want to make that behavioral change in your own life.
Thank you so much. David, do I send them on? Oh, you're going to. Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming and thank you to the panels. Yeah. You guys are great. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Hello. Well, let me see if my mic's on. Oh, it is. Okay. So one of the things that I've learned, my situation's a little bit different because I'm the one that pays for all of our bills. I do all of our finances in my marriage. If you ask my husband, how much money do you have in your checking account? He would have no idea. He would not be able to answer that. That's why he's going to Costco and buying paddle boards that I have to take back because I don't want to have to pay for it. But listening to this conversation, I'm going to go home today and I'm going to say, listen, you need to be empowered. You need to know how much money we have. I am tired of carrying the burden. And maybe some of you, I mean, it's stressful for me. And so maybe some of you out there who let your husbands or even you do it yourself can have that conversation and talk about how sharing might be a little bit easier. And I'm not standing in the line at Costco trying to return things that he buys. Okay, just a little housekeeping that we want to do here. We are going to post some photos. And if you take any photos here today, the handle is at Utah Treasure. You can go to Facebook, you can go to Instagram, you can go to Twitter, and you can just send out those photos and we would so appreciate it. So again, the handle is at Utah Treasure. And for some house cleaning business as well, if you all would grab your pens and your agenda, because we're going to make a couple changes. The workshop called Social Security, let me give you a second. I'll give you a second, and then I'll let you know the changes. Thank you, ladies. That was fantastic. It was so very helpful. It really was.